Hi everyone and welcome back for part 3 of this Elise series. In this episode I'll be talking about the chassis or the tub of the Elise. Now what made the Elise a bit of a revolution was the use of anodised, extruded and sheet aluminium to manufacture the chassis, and then instead of welding it, Lotus chose to rivet and bond it together using a heat cured epoxy adhesive. Very different from the other car made at the same time, the Esprit. Now this used a fabricated steel backbone chassis manufactured in-house at Hethel, then hot dip galvanised. In fact, the introduction of the Elise would see Lotus move gradually away from in-house manufacturing of its cars to sourcing external suppliers. As well as the Esprit chassis being made in-house, so was the body in a laminating shop, the engine in the engine shop. All plastic components were made in the ABS shop, interior trim in the trim shop, and most of the suspension in the fabrication shop. The only main components that were bought in were the gearbox from Renault, the wheels, the brakes, the tyres, the insurance, etc. Now with the introduction of the Elise, this changed. The chassis or tub was bought in from Hydro in Denmark, the engine and gearbox from MG Rover. But the bodywork was still manufactured in-house at Hethel in the laminating shop. What little trim the Elise had was still made in the trim shop. Manufacturing of bodywork would be outsourced later on the Series 2 Elise. This would go to France, with Lotus just bonding the finished panels together in the body bonding area. Now looking at the new Emira, a lot more is just bought in and assembled at Hethel. True, the tub is manufactured by Lotus, but this is only because Lotus bought the chassis manufacturer. More on that later. There is no Lotus engine, so no engine shop, just engine dress. The trim shop was one of the last existing departments still going, but this will be shut down because most of the trim is now being bought in. I know this is a way of modern manufacturing, but it seems a shame that all those skills that Lotus once possessed and utilised are going. Anyway, enough of that. Back to the Elise Series 1. Now Lotus worked with CB Polymers of Switzerland and Hydro Aluminium of Denmark to produce the tub. The tubs are assembled on a jig, the adhesive applied, and the whole lot is riveted together and shoved in an oven at 200 degrees centigrade to cure the adhesive. So the first Elise tubs were produced in Denmark, then shipped to Hethel. Later manufacture of the tub would move to the UK in Worcester and would be made initially by Hydro Raufoss Automotive UK Limited, which then became Hydro Automotive Structures UK Limited, and then it became Hydro Aluminium Worcester Limited, and then Holden Aluminium Worcester Limited. And in 2008, for whatever reason, financial I think, which I don't know, Lotus bought the company and it became Lotus Lightweight Structures Limited. Now very recently the Worcester manufacturing plant was closed and moved to a new site in Norwich. All the staff that didn't want to transfer to Norfolk were made redundant. The anodising plant remained in Wellingborough, but Lotus has just sold this off to Burnley-based BCW Manufacturing Group. Now, to tell the difference between a Danish-built tub and a UK-made tub, just look at the colour of the adhesive. If it's green, then it's Danish. If it's orange, then it's UK-made. It's very stiff and light at only 74 kilos and also very strong. Ideal for a sports car, but can be damaged beyond repair if you're unlucky. Now Lotus have always stated that absolutely no repair should be attempted on the chassis, as the aluminium cannot be welded and the adhesive cannot be reapplied, so structural integrity can't be guaranteed. Now minor dents can be left, and if the floor pan is damaged, say by a lump of concrete puncturing it on a motorway, this can be hammered flat and an aluminium patch applied using suitable adhesive. The floor pan is not a main structural panel. Now some early Elises suffered corrosion under the front foot mats because Lotus stuck PVC mats in which trapped moisture. A bulletin was issued in 2004 for all Elises to rectify this. if the corrosion was extensive, then a kit was supplied that had secondary floor panels to be bonded on. Now, the serious damage that can write a tub off is usually the front suspension pickup points. If the car smacks into a curb or similar, the wishbone should collapse and save the tub from damage. But if the impact is serious enough, it can damage the suspension pickup points. If you do suffer a serious impact to the front suspension, very thoroughly inspect the bonded area of the pickup points. They are easy to identify, as there will be adhesive where the components are joined. If on inspection there are any signs of cracks in the joint, then it is severely weakened. Another concern, and worthy of a good inspection on your own car or one you may be thinking of buying, is around the area where the bobbins are bonded into the tub, particularly the top ones. These bobbins are made from steel and coated, then bonded in, so there should be no contact between the different metals. Most of you clever people out there will know what happens if steel and aluminium come into close contact with each other and an electrolyte is applied, such as salt water. A process called galvanic corrosion will occur, which will basically eat the aluminium. It should not happen, as the bobbin is coated and the tub is anodised, so there's no close contact of the metals. But it does happen in some cases. We had reports at the factory of some cases, and an investigation was started. Most cars were series 1s at this point, and we saw perforation of the aluminium around the top front bobbin area. These cars were all over 10 years old, in general good condition, and not in coastal areas. And on some it only affected one side, which was odd. The conclusion that the clever bods came up with was that the wheel cleaner had been used to clean the wheels, and some of the spray had settled on the area in question and not been washed off thoroughly. Now, some of these wheel cleaners are quite acidic, and if left on coated metal will strip the coating, then expose the bare metal, and then you have the perfect storm, so to speak. Two different types of metal, wet roads with salt applied in the winter. Now, a solution was looked at to repair the area and fit new bobbins, but it was decided that this was not an appropriate repair, as the repair could not be guaranteed to be 100% structurally safe. The only solution suggested by Lotus at the time was a complete replacement of the tub. Not very helpful, really. Now, if your lovely new Lotus was involved in an accident where the tub was deemed unrepairable, a new tub would be required. But Lotus have never supplied bare tubs. If you needed one, then you had to order what Lotus call a partial body, which, as you can see, is a good part of the car, including the body sides, the subframe, crash structure, pipework, rear bulkhead, etc. Now, the one pictured is a later series car. These were only made to order, but at least you could rebuild your car and it would be as good as new. They cost around £10,000 to £12,000. The Lotus labour time to transfer all the bits from a crash car onto a partial body is 60.5 hours, and it can be done in that time because I've done a couple myself. Extra time, of course, is needed to paint the body sides though. And at the end of it, you would have a nearly new car. Fantastic. Now, here's the rub. Series 1 partial bodies were made obsolete by Lotus quite a while ago, and I have it on good authority that Lotus have now made all partial bodies for Elise, Exige and Evora of any age obsolete. In other words, they don't make them anymore. So if you own a late or final edition version of any of these cars and are unlucky enough to crash and damage this tub severely, you're not going to be able to replace it and have your much loved car back on the road. Not a very good decision by Lotus, considering that they only stopped making all those 3 cars a few months ago. Luckily, the tubs are pretty strong, unless you are unlucky enough to rip out the suspension pickup points. Now, I would not trust any repair on this area for road use, and I've seen some dodgy repairs that I wouldn't want to be driving down a motorway. If the car is used only on a track, it's a different matter. I've seen repairs that are okay for the track, but remember that on a track you're in a car with a roll cage, wearing a race suit, a crash helmet, full on a seatbelt, and all the traffic hopefully is going the same way. Now, Lotus knew the possibility of damaging the tub in an accident and did some things to mitigate this and also protect occupants by fitting crash structures to both ends of the car and using tubular suspension arms. The front crash structure is made by Lotus from fiberglass and not carbon fibre, as some people may think just because it's black. It still only weighs in at 8.5 kilos and is very strong and designed to absorb a crash impact to protect the occupants and the tub by collapsing along with everything else that's fixed to it, such as the clamshell, the radiator, etc. Now let's give a labour time of 3.4 hours to replace this once the clamshell and all the other bits are removed. It's a messy job to do. Now the rear end is protected by the subframe, which on the Series 1 is much smaller than the later cars, but still does the same job of protecting the tub, plus other duties. And it contains all the suspension pickups. Made in-house by Lotus Fabrication from steel and hot dip galvanised. Quoted Lotus labour time to replace is 8 hours. In the event of a rollover, the occupants are protected by a steel rollover bar bolted to the tub, which also acts as a seatbelt mounting point. Further protection is given by the windscreen frame, which is bonded to the scuttle of the tub, and this is a single very moulding with hollow foam filled sections. It all works very well, and I've seen a few Series 1s that have rolled and it held up perfectly with very little damage to the car or its occupants. And finally, for your safety, both doors contain aluminium door beams to protect from side intrusions. But it's not indestructible, so do all you can to avoid an accident for the sake of your car and, more importantly, your own safety and survival. So that's the tub, an innovation at the time that has served Lotus well and is still used in its basic form today in the new Emira. Strong, stiff and light, just what you want for a sports car. Now in the next part I'll be stripping back the bodywork and having to delve about what's underneath the bodywork. So until then, take care, enjoy your Lotus, and so long.